Section 7 of the Rover, Volume 1, Number 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Rover, Volume 1, Number 4, edited by Seba Smith and Lawrence Labree. Section 7. Zoe, a tale of the youth of Julius Caesar. It was almost midnight. The party had separated. Catiline and Cethegus were still conferring in the supper-room, which was, as usual, the highest apartment of the house. It formed a cupola, from which windows opened on the flat roof that surrounded it. To this terrace Zoe had retired. With eyes dimmed by fond and melancholy tears, she leaned over the balustrades to catch the last glimpse of the departing form of Caesar. As it grew more and more indistinct in the moonlight, had he any thought of her, any love for her, he, the favourite of the high-born beauties of Rome, the most splendid, the most graceful, the most eloquent of its nobles? It could not be. His voice had indeed been touchingly soft whenever he addressed her. There had been a fascinating tenderness even in the vivacity of his look and conversation, but such were always the manners of Caesar toward women. He had wreathed a sprig of myrtle in her hair as she was singing. She took it from her dark ringlets and kissed it and wept over it and thought of the sweet legends of her own dear Greece, of youths and girls who, pining away in hopeless love, had been transformed into flowers by the compassions of the gods, and she wished to become a flower which Caesar might sometimes touch, though he should touch it only to weave a crown for some prouder and happier mistress. She was roused from her musings by the loud step and voice of Cethegus, who was pacing furiously up and down the supper-room. May all the gods confound me, if Caesar be not the deepest traitor or the most miserable idiot that ever intermeddled with a plot. Zoe shuddered. She drew nearer to the window. She stood concealed from observation by the curtain of a fine network which hung over the aperture to exclude the annoying insects of the climate. "And you too," continued Cethegus, turning fiercely on his accomplice, "you take his part against me, you who proposed the scheme yourself. My dear Caius Cethegus, you will not understand me. I proposed the scheme, and I will join in executing it, but policy is as necessary to our plans as boldness. I did not wish to startle Caesar, to lose his cooperation, perhaps to send him off with an information against us to Cicero and Catullus. He was so indignant at your suggestion that all my dissimulation was scarcely sufficient to prevent a total rupture. Indignant, the gods confound him. He prated about humanity and generosity and moderation. By Hercules, I have not heard such a lecture since I was with Xenocates at Rhodes. Caesar is made up of inconsistencies. He has boundless ambition, unquestioned courage, admirable sagacity, yet I have frequently observed in him a womanish weakness at the sight of pain. I remember that once one of his slaves was taken ill while carrying his litter. He alighted, put the fellow in his place, and walked home in a fall of snow. I wonder that you could be so ill-advised as to talk to him of massacre and pillage and conflagration. You might have foreseen that such propositions would disgust a man of his temper. I do not know. I have not yet your self-command, Lucius. I hate such conspirators. What is the use of them? We must have blood, hacking and tearing work, bloody work. Do not grind your teeth, my dear Caius, and lay down your carving knife. By Hercules, you have cut up all the stuffing of the couch. No matter, we shall have couches enough soon, and down to stuff them with, and pretty women to loll on them, unless this fool and such as he spoil our plans. I had something else to say. This essenced fop wishes to seduce Zoe from me. Impossible. You misconstrue the ordinary gallantries which he is in the habit of paying to every handsome face. Curse on his ordinary gallantries, and his verses, and his compliments, and his sprigs of myrtle. If Caesar should dare, by Hercules, I will tear him to pieces in the middle of the forum. Trust his destruction to me. We must use his talents and influence, thrust him upon every danger, make him our instrument while we are contending, our peace offering to the Senate if we fail, our first victim if we succeed. Hark! What noise was that? Somebody in the terrace. Lend me your dagger. Catiline rushed to the window. Zoe was standing in the shade. He stepped out. She darted into the room, passed like lightning by the startled Cathegus, flew down the stairs, through the court, through the vestibule, through the street. Steps, voices, lights came fast and confusedly behind her, but with the speed of love and terror she gained upon her pursuers. She fled through the wilderness of unknown and dusky streets, till she found herself breathless and exhausted in the midst of a crowd of gallants, who, with chaplets on their heads and torches in their hands, were reeling from the portico of a stately mansion. The foremost of the throng was a youth, whose slender figure and beautiful countenance seemed hardly consistent with his sex, but the feminine delicacy of his features rendered more frightful the mingled sensuality and ferocity of their expression. The libertine audacity of his stare and the grotesque foppery of his apparel seemed to indicate at least a partial insanity. Flinging one arm round Zoe, and tearing away her veil with the other, he disclosed to the gaze of his thronging companions the regular features and large dark eyes which characterized Athenian beauty. "Clodius has all the luck tonight," cried Ligarius. "Not so, by Hercules," said Marcus Caelius. "The girl is fairly our common prize. We will fling dice for her. The Venus throw, as it ought to do, shall decide." "Let me go, for heaven's sake," cried Zoe, struggling with Clodius. "What a charming Greek accent she has! Come into the house, my little Athenian nightingale. Oh, what will become of me, if you have mothers, if you have sisters?" "Clodius has a sister," muttered Ligarius, "or he is much belied." "By heavens, she is weeping," said Clodius. "If she were not evidently a Greek," said Caelius, "I should take her for a Vestal Virgin." "And if she were a Vestal Virgin," cried Clodius fiercely, "it should not deter me. This way, no struggling, no screaming." "Struggling, screaming!" exclaimed a gay and commanding voice. "You are making very ungentle love, Clodius." The whole party started. Caesar had mingled with them unperceived. The sound of his voice thrilled through the very heart of Zoe. With a convulsive effort she burst from the grasp of her insolent admirer, flung herself at the feet of Caesar, and clasped his knees. The moon shone full on her agitated and imploring face. Her lips moved, but she uttered no sound. He gazed at her for an instant, raised her, clasped her to his bosom. "Fear nothing, my sweet Zoe." Then, with folded arms and a smile of placid defiance, he placed himself between her and Clodius. Clodius staggered forward, flushed with wine and rage, uttering alternately a curse and a hiccup. "By Pollux, this passes a jest. Caesar, how dare you insult me thus?" "In jest? I am as serious as a Jew. On the Sabbath, insult you for such a pair of eyes? I would insult the whole consular bench, or I should be as insensible as King Psammes' mummy." "Good God, Caesar," said Marcus Caelius, interposing, "you cannot think it worth while to get into a brawl for a little Greek girl?" "Why not? The Greek girls have used me as well as Rome. Besides, the whole reputation of my gallantry is at stake. Give up such a lovely woman to that drunken boy, my character would be gone for ever. No more perfumed tablets full of vows and raptures, no more toying with fingers at the circus, no more evening walks along the Tiber, no more hiding in chests or jumping from windows. I, the favoured suitor of half the white stoles in Rome, could never again aspire above a freed woman. You, a man of gallantry, and think of such a thing? For shame, my dear Caelius. Do not let Clodia hear of it." While Caesar spoke, he had been engaged in keeping Clodius at arm's length. The rage of the frantic libertine increased as the struggle continued. "Stand back, as you value your life," he cried. "I will pass." "Not this way, sweet Clodius. I have too much regard for you to suffer you to make love at such a disadvantage. You smell too much of Falernian at present. Would you stifle your mistress? By Hercules, you are fit to kiss nobody now, except old Piso, when he is rumbling home in the morning from the vintner's. Clodius plunged his hand into his bosom and drew a little dagger, the faithful companion of many desperate adventures. "O gods, he will be murdered!" cried Zoe. The whole throng of revellers was in agitation. The street fluctuated with torches and lifted hands. It was but for a moment. Caesar watched with a steady eye the descending hand of Clodius, arrested the blow, seized his antagonist by the throat, and flung him against one of the pillars of the portico with such a violence that he rolled, stunned and senseless, on the ground. "He is killed!" cried several voices. "Fair self-defence, by Hercules!" said Marcus Caelius. "Bear witness you all saw him draw his dagger." "He is not dead, he breathes," said Ligarius. "Carry him into the house, he is dreadfully bruised." The rest of the party retired with Clodius. Caelius turned to Caesar. "By all the gods, Caesar, you have won your lady fairly. A splendid victory. You deserve a triumph. What a madman has Clodius become! Intolerable! But come and sup with me on the Nons. You have no objection to meet the consul." "Cicero? None at all. We need not talk politics. Our old dispute about Plato and Epicurus will furnish us plenty of conversation. So reckon upon me, my dear Marcus, and farewell." "Caesar, you are in danger. I know all. Overheard Catiline and Cethegus. You are engaged in a project which must lead you to certain destruction. My beautiful Zoe, I live only for glory and pleasure. For these I have never hesitated to hazard an existence which they alone render valuable to me. In the present case, I can assure you that our scheme presents the fairest hopes of success." "So much the worse. You do not know, you do not understand me. I speak not of open peril, but of secret treachery. Catiline hates you, Cethegus hates you. Your destruction is resolved. If you survive the contest, you perish in the first hour of victory. They detest you for your moderation. They are eager for blood and plunder. I have risked my life to bring you this warning, but that is of little moment. Farewell, be happy." Caesar stopped her. "Do you fly from my thanks, dear Zoe?" "I wish not your thanks, but for your safety. I desire not to defraud Valeria or Servilia of one caress extorted from gratitude or pity. Be my feelings what they may, I have learned in a fearful school to endure and suppress them. I have been taught to abase a proud spirit to the clasps and hisses of the vulgar, to smile on suitors who united the insults of a despicable pride to the endearments of a despicable fondness, to affect sprightliness with an aching head and eyes from which tears were ready to rush, to feign love when curses were on my lips, and madness in my brain. Who feels for me any esteem, any tenderness? Who will shed a tear over the nameless grave, which will soon shelter from cruelty and scorn the broken heart of the poor Athenian girl? But you, who alone have addressed her in her degradation with a voice of kindness and respect, farewell. Sometimes think of me, not with sorrow. No, I could bear your ingratitude, but not your distress. Yet if it will not pain too much, in distant days when your lofty hopes and destinies are accomplished, on the evening of some mighty victory, in the chariot of some magnificent triumph, think on one who loved you with that exceeding love which only the miserable can feel. Think that wherever her exhausted frame may have sunk beneath the sensibilities of a tortured spirit, in whatever hovel or whatever vault she may have closed her eyes, whatever strange scenes of horror and infamy may have surrounded her dying bed, your shape was the last that swam before her sight, your voice the last sound that was ringing in her ears. Yet turn your face to me, Caesar. Let me carry away one last look of those features, and then—" He turned round, he hid his face on her bosom, and burst into tears. With sobs, long and loud, and convulsive as those of a terrified child, he poured forth the tribute of impetuous and uncontrollable emotion. He raised his head, but in vain struggled to restore composure to the brow which had confronted the frown of Sylla, and the lips which had rivaled the eloquence of Cicero. He several times attempted to speak, but in vain, and his voice still faltered with tenderness, when after a pause of several minutes he thus addressed her: "My own dear Zoe, Your love has been bestowed on one who, if he cannot merit, can at least appreciate and adore you. Beings of similar loveliness and similar devotedness of affection mingled in all my boyish dreams of greatness, with visions of curule chairs and ivory cars, marshalled legions and fasces. Such I have endeavoured to find in the world, and in their stead I have met with selfishness, with vanity, with frivolity, with falsehood. The life which you have preserved is a boon, less valuable than the affection. O Caesar, interrupted the blushing Zoe, think only on your own security at present, if you feel as you speak, but you are only mocking me, or perhaps your compassion. By heaven, by every oath that is binding. Alas, alas, Caesar, were not all the same oaths sworn yesterday to Valeria? But I will trust you, at least so far as to partake your present dangers. Flight may be necessary. Form your plans, be they what they may. There is one who, in exile, in poverty and peril, asks only to wander, to beg, to die with you. My Zoe, I do not anticipate any such necessity to renounce the conspiracy without renouncing the principles on which it was originally undertaken, to elude the vengeance of the Senate without losing the confidence of the people, is indeed an arduous but not an impossible task. I owe it to myself and to my country to make the attempt. There is still ample time for consideration. At present I am too happy in love to think of ambition or danger. They had reached the door of a stately palace. Caesar struck it. It was instantly opened by a slave. Zoe found herself in a magnificent hall, surrounded by pillars of green marble, between which were ranged the statues of the long line of Julian nobles. "Call Endymion," said Caesar. The confidential freedman made his appearance, not without a slight smile, which his patron's good nature emboldened him to hazard at seeing the beautiful Athenian. "Arm my slaves, Endymion. There are reasons for precaution. Let them relieve each other on guard during the night. Zoe, my love, my preserver, why are your cheeks so pale? Let me kiss some bloom into them. How you tremble! Endymion, a flask of Samian and some fruit. Bring them to my apartments. This way, my sweet Zoe." End of Section 7.